Hey guys, and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Shadow of the Erdtree. Today we're talking about an awesome fact, and that is that ranged weapons are absolutely incredible in this DLC. And you don't have to take my word for it either. Days ago, the challenge runner Ongbal released a short video of themselves facing the final boss of the DLC, so spoilers for that about to happen. Ongbal showcased their incredible run of New Game Plus 7, the hardest mode you can play, facing the final boss with 2 bows equipped. The run was only about 4 minutes long, not 40 as you might have thought, and the damage is seriously impressive. They did not even use the full power of the bow with the Ash of War specifically. So how is this possible? How would you go about playing a ranger only in this DLC? The truth is, your options have never been better. So we're going to talk about it. To start with, there's going to be 3 important topics we should highlight. And the first one is the most obvious, which is this brand new talisman for ranger playstyles. The Arrow Soaring Sting Talisman increases the effective range of bows and attack power of your ranged weapons. The effective range is just for bows, and it basically means how far you can shoot away at a target, more relevant in open world, but it can be handy in big boss arenas. But the attack power boost is for both arrows and bolts, so whether you're using a bow or a crossbow, you should see this as a combination of the previous 2 talismans tied to this, Arrow's Reach and Arrow's Sting. These days you're going to use Arrow's Sting and just ignore the Reach one, because you can get the benefit of the boost of arrows and bolts with the original Arrow Sting and stack that with the new one, enjoying the effective range increase that this provides passively anyway. So if you want this talisman, you're going to need to pick it up in the DLC. The nearest grace to get that done is this one, Scadu Altus West, which is just west and around the corner from the High Road Cross. You're going to need to enter the Fog Rift Fort and make your way to the tower. To do that, you can just drop down from the grace, dropping onto these little cliff edges. There's a Marika statue once you get down to the actual fort, and just be careful of all the explosive barrels. Any fire damage is going to set them off. Make your way to the tower at the back. There's a mini boss fight there if you're interested, but by going around the back of the tower on the northeastern side, you can go around to the back side of the fort and climb a ladder leading to the top where we find the talisman. And with that equipped, you're ready to go for pretty much any range build. But now, what weapon or weapons should you be using? There's actually a bunch of new options in this DLC, so we're going to cover all of them, starting with the best one, probably the primary one that you will use. That's the anshbach longbow, new in the DLC. It is a physical bow, and it scales at a D rating with strength and dex, even when fully upgraded, which sucks. Also, the attributes required are quite interesting. You don't need much strength, but you do need 43 dexterity. And that's the primary stat that it scales with, despite the fact that it says D in strength and dex. Why this is so good though is the unique skill, Fan Shot, which essentially fires 8 arrows in one when you use it. It's awesome, but there's a very strange detail about it. You're going to see how I'm going to hit with some of the arrows, but not all of them, and it still dealt 2,446 damage, despite the fact that half of them missed. Let's get closer and make sure a lot more actually hit, and you'll see how it deals the exact same damage, even though there was obviously more arrows hitting. For whatever reason, Fan Shot is allowing you to land even just one of these shots, and all of them count as if every single one of them hit. Obviously, that's incredible with status build up. 8 arrows that deal bleed in one go will lead to a proc consistently and massive damage tied to that. Also, you could apply other statuses like rot and poison and so on super quick, or abuse weaknesses such as fire or magical very effectively. As you can see, it is a very effective boss killer, one of the highest DPS DLC options you have, but that is because this Ash of War seems to be bugged. If they do fix this to make it so the arrows accurately represent the damage, it will lose a lot of value, but it's still going to be one of the best weapons baseline for ranging anyway, because of the raw damage that it provides. To get it, you're going to need to do Leda's storyline, which basically has her ultimately hunt the Hornsen, which you help her with. That happens in the Shadowkeep, and then you speak with her again, and her next target becomes anshbach. This time in the Shadowkeep, you have the summon signs, and you choose to assist anshbach, and for that, he'll reward you with his bow. So yes, the anshbach bow, pretty damn good. Let's talk about the next one. Second to that, I would say, is the bone bow, which we did actually see Ongbal use briefly in his incredible New Game Plus 7 final boss fight kill. The purpose of that was for Ranker Shot, the Ash of War, which we'll explain. But kind of the same, it's a very limited scaling bow and just primary physical. The unique aspect of this is its spirit calling ability from the Ash of War. Essentially, it's just a short bow, and what you're doing is firing off barrage, but it comes with this unique effect where you can see this magical light up, and what that does is it auto locks onto a target. So those arrows are pretty much not going to miss, and as you can see, they fire pretty damn quick. Combine that with any status like bleed or scarlet rot, and you can get a nice burst build-up of that, getting the proc pretty quickly. Pulling this out suddenly is a good idea if you want to maintain status that you've lost, but it's also quite relevant in PvP. Apparently there is quite the problem. To get it, you actually need to come here to Bellarat and enter this tower on the map, which is where you find 2 spider scorpions waiting in ambush, and the bow's just on the body on the floor to pick up. Next we have the crossbows, which, you know, they're definitely relevant, but I think they've got more uses in PvP, to be honest. Basically, the spread crossbow is a shotgun style shot. So you're firing 10 bolts in one go. So if you look at the bottom left, we have 89. I fire it once, down to 79. That's a lot, that's very expensive. But obviously it's very easy to hit those shots, and there's a lot of status potential build up there too. It can be really annoying if you're using sleep, like I say in PvP, but in PvE, what we care about, I just don't rate this very high. Also, you're not really going to commit to this too high with its, lack of scaling. It's pretty much just for the status burst. If you are interested in that though, come to the Gravesite Plains, cross the main bridge, and you've got the camp here, the castle front, and just down around the corner, roughly about here, is a body with the bow to pick up. Slightly more interesting and effective than that is this one, the repeating crossbow. Again, it's obviously not got the greatest scaling, but the status build-up potential is very high. Just like any other crossbow, you fire it once and reload, not too interesting. The Asher Wall repeating fire puts this thing on the side, and then that causes you to hold it down and fire it like a machine gun, firing a bunch of shots very quickly and effectively. So we start with 56 and we go down to 44. So that's 12 shots compared to 10 of the shotgun style option. Again, great for sudden build-up of status or chip damage and poke, probably more suited to PvP. For this one, you need to come to the second region, the Scadu Altus, and the nearest grace is probably the Morth Ruins. You just run down the main road. Eventually, about here, you'll come across a ghost flame dragon fighting some militia. You don't even need to fight any of them. The crossbow's on the body here for you to run up and pick up, and get out of there no problem. Last up, I also want to mention Igon's greatbow and his anti-dragon kind of concept. Obviously, Igon's questline is tied to the dragons, and ultimately you'll need to complete his questline by defeating Bale with him, and then you can return to his last known location to take his gear and get his bow, as well as his bell bearing, which allows you to go back to the Round Table Hold, upgrade the maidens, and now you can buy his harpoons, which are essentially just great arrows that deal extra damage to dragons. So between the mix of the passive of the greatbow itself and these great arrows, you're dealing extra damage to dragons. If you're doing anything with dragons and you're playing a ranger, then this is the obvious weapon to go for. But outside of that, it's definitely not a concern. Still, it's nice to have a dragon killing bow in the game and the right ammo for that. Now, with the weapons explained, let's talk about the armor set that you could consider wearing for this. As you saw in the footage at the start of the video, Ongbal, who took down the final boss, was wearing the full anshbach armor set, the anshbach attire, and then also the wise man mask. In the description, this slightly enhances the blood oath and dynastic skills. This is about a 3% increase per piece of armor, I believe. So you would assume, based on what we saw with Ongbal, that was just the optimal pick. Because we're going to be using anshbach's longbow as your main weapon, fan shot must be one of these dynastic skills, right? So I'm here just to show you exactly how this works. With a single shot against an ambush target with a basic shot with none of the armor set equipped, we dealt 711 damage. Then the exact same scenario with the exact same setup, except now we're wearing the full anshbach outfit, we dealt 711 damage. So it does not increase the damage of the actual weapon in any baseline. Now instead, let's use the Ash of War, which might be a dynastic skill, right? And then with basic arrows, as before, as long as one of these hits, we get the max damage. So 2,508 damage there. And once more, same setup, but now we're wearing the anshbach set. So fan shot hitting, it deals 2,508 damage. So this armor set does not increase the Ash of War of anshbach's weapon. It's not a dynasty weapon, and neither is the Ash of War. Quite disappointing, but I figured I'd include this as a disclaimer. I think people will be asking that question. So unfortunately, this does mean there is not a new armor set in the DLC specifically for ranging. What you'll see people recommend for rangers is the Blue Dancer Charm, which will raise your attack power with lower equip load while they wear lighter gear. This is definitely an option, but probably not optimal or your best option. After all, you can wear actual armor that will protect you more and, provide you with more poise. And then also there are other modifiers that do exist. For example, as you can see, that's a damage increase. By wearing the Rakshasa full set, I gained nearly 200 damage there on the same setup as before. So technically, there is a new armor set for ranger builds. It's just the one we're all using whenever we can. Okay, so with that, you've seen the new items and mechanics and considerations, the test to talk about what really does work. Let's now cover what I would recommend you should run in full, ideally if you're going to go a ranger. Now, obviously, based on what we've seen with that incredible run with the final boss, and my own testing against bosses with this Ash of War, it's clear that the best bow you could possibly use is now the anshbach longbow. Despite its awkward attribute scaling of strength and dex, it actually scales better with dex, and you can tell from the attributes required because you need barely any strength and you need a lot of dex. Fanshot is where a lot of this damage will come from, but because that's so expensive on the arrows, obviously you can't do it infinitely. But if you're able to kill a boss in time before you run out of arrows, you're fine. And that's perfectly reasonable because you should have just under 200 for whatever options you have. Second to that then, of course you want to run the bone bow. This is for those situations where you need to be able to very quickly reapply a status, or if you get a quick burst of it off, you could finish a target off. Mostly though, it is just going to be anshbach, and you could ignore the bone bow even so. Now technically, there's a third weapon option that I want you to consider, and that's the Commander's Standard. There's only one purpose for running this, and that is the Ash of War Rallying Strike, which gives you an increase to your attack power for a little period of time. So the idea is before you actually start a boss fight, swap to that, use the Ash of War, and then unequip it or whatever. That's certainly min-maxing, but you'll be fine if you're just using the bow. What about the actual arrows that you should use? Well, I would say you've got three main options. Your primary arrow, which is going to be either magic-based or fire-based, because those are the most common weaknesses that you're going to come across. Many enemies are taking a little bit more magic damage. It's almost like a default option, but sometimes you'll come across enemies that are extra weak to fire. They even have unique modifiers or animations, like the hands, where you'll be hard stunned by that. So swapping between these two is generally the way you're going to go. And then second to that is going to be your status. If it's just a normal enemy that you're going to kill relatively quickly by just spamming the Ash of War like I do in many cases, then just using bleed setups is completely reasonable. But if it's a very high health enemy, of which there are a few in the DLC, like the final boss, it's going to be worth it to use something like Scarlet Rot to deal a lot of damage over time, to the point where you'll need to reapply it during a 4-minute fight. So it is worth considering Scarlet Rot. Most of the time, I just stick with bleed. For your talisman, it's pretty much, of course, going to be Arrow's Soaring Sting and Arrow's Sting combined together. This is going to raise the attack power bonus of your arrows for your bow, and they stack well together, so why not enjoy that benefit? After that, I would strongly recommend the Two-Headed Turtle Talisman. It massively increases your stamina recovery speed, and because this is really expensive on stamina when you're spamming firing and then rolling at the same time, you're going to need that faster recovery speed, so you're always able to dodge what's coming. The Force slot is kind of utility. Obviously, we're spamming the Ash of War when we can, but we're not always able to do that. So Shadow of Alexander can be a slot you move around. And something that you'll see speedrunners do, like we saw with that incredible final boss kill with this bow, the Red Feather Branch Sword was being used. And this will increase your attack power as long as you maintain low health. Problem is you probably get one shot if you do that, so I wouldn't recommend it to most people. An alternative to that will be the Ritual Sword. This will increase your attack power when you're at full health. It's a lot safer, but that could also be impractical for you as well. So I mean, you know, use what you feel is best. Erdtree's Favor, the classic Dragon Crest Great Shield. It isn't always best to maximize your damage at the cost of good gameplay. For the armor set, I do believe generally the Rakshasa armor set is going to be your biggest damage increase, but there are plenty of pieces with unique effects you may find benefit from. For the Wondrous Physic, just getting the flat attack power increase through Blood-Sucking Cracktear, the new one, and then something utility-based. Opaline's nice because of the damage negation. You could go for the stamina-based ones as well, for obvious reasons. The last thing I want to highlight is consumables, which you should always be considering when you're min-maxing anyway. Whether you're going for super stamina recovery speed, maybe boosting your physical attack, or even in the case of bleed, there's the new Sacred Bloody Flesh, boosting physical attack power, and when you actually trigger Bloodlust, you get even more, like another white mask. It's pretty damn cool. Stats wise, it's a bit awkward. Here I have 60 vigor, but you could go lower. There's nothing wrong with even having 40 vigor. You're meant to be avoiding damage and playing from far away, but obviously the more vigor you have, the more space you have for mistakes. I would recommend at least 20 mind so that you're able to spam your FP Ashes of War, and 20 endurance to be able to wear the set and have the second bow equipped. You will need more endurance if you're going to run the standard for the commanding rally, and having more stamina is never a bad thing. I leave strength alone as much as I can, as well as intelligence, spending everything else in dex where it best scales. I do invest a little bit in faith so I can get the two incantations there, Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength, for a little bit more AR, because why not? But if you're going to choose to level above 150, you could also level strength more, maxing out both strength and dexterity first. But there you have it. That is our overview of the DLC bows and ranged weapons in general. All the stuff we've had a look at, tested and tried to find what seems to work the best with our new options. I hope this information was useful, and if it was, do drop a like, and good luck with your bow challenge runs. They're even easier than ever before. Though, keep a lookout for that anshbach bow nerf that could be coming, because obviously all 8 arrows hitting, even if you only hit 1, doesn't feel intentional. If they nerf that, that's going to hit this bow hard, but it's still going to be your best option for using the bow at a raw level anyway. But for now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.